Imagine looking up at a perfect night sky only to realize those twinkling stars aren't distant suns but silent sentinels, watching your every move. And tonight, Elena discovers their secret in a way that will shatter everything she thought she knew. If you're new here, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The stars looked quiet from the command deck of the Seeker's Pulse, drifting in the stillness between star systems. Commander Brannock Thorne stood with his hands behind his back, his deep violet eyes locked on the main screen. He had traveled many strange paths through the galaxy in his 25 years of service, but something about this stretch of space made him uneasy. It was too quiet. No transmissions, no background radiation, not even the faint hum of space debris on the outer hull, just silence. The kind of silence that made experienced explorers keep their hands close to the emergency controls. Below him, systems analyst Nova Melrick adjusted her interface, eyes scanning layers of incoming sensor data. Her voice broke the silence without warning. "Commander," she said, her tone clipped and tense. "I've got something. Large mass, artificial structure, approximately 30 degrees starboard, hidden among the outer asteroid cluster." Brannock turned his head slowly. "Show me." The screen shifted. At first it was just a blur, a faint shadow half lost behind tumbling rock. But then the system refined the image, sharpening lines, enhancing shapes. What appeared was unmistakably a vessel, huge, cold, motionless. Its design was unfamiliar, all straight angles and brutal structure like a blade carved from stone. The hull had deep scars, and what looked like dormant weapon bays dotted its surface like watching eyes. "Size?" he asked. 3 kilometers in length, possibly more, Nova replied, her voice growing steadier. "No power readings, no movement, no active emissions. It looks dead." Commander Brannock stepped closer to the display. "That's no cargo hauler." "No, sir, and nothing in our Confederation records matches the build." Brannock narrowed his eyes. "Life signs?" "None. No biosigns, no radiation, just a cold shell." For a long moment, no one said anything. The bridge crew waited quietly as Brannock studied the image. The vessel had the look of something ancient, yet everything about it felt recent. There was no decay, no dusting of cosmic debris. It looked like it had simply arrived here and stopped. "Bring us in closer," he said finally. "Slow approach, no active scans yet." Nova hesitated. "Should we alert the sector relay?" "Not yet. Let's understand what we found first." On the other side of the asteroid field, deep within the darkened corridors of the Ember Arc, Commander Ellis Vorn sat unmoving in his command chair. The ship's systems were in a false shutdown mode, silent and hidden beneath layers of signal, dampeners and thermal cloaking. His eyes remained closed, but his mind was wide awake, tuned through the neural network that connected him to every officer aboard. The crew's bodies appeared limp, as if frozen, but their thoughts moved in coordinated patterns beneath the surface. "Status," he whispered into the link. "Alien vessel has visual lock," replied Lyra Holland, the ship's communication officer. Her mental tone was calm, focused. "They are observing. Their scans remain passive for now." Ellis gave a slow nod, though no one saw it. "Maintain blackout, let them believe we're dead metal." They had waited 3 weeks in this asteroid field, surrounded by false readings and decoy structures, letting the galaxy think Ember Arc was a long-forgotten ruin. But it wasn't forgotten. It was bait. Human command wanted answers about this so-called confederation that claimed to govern the surrounding star clusters. Their vessels had been spotted more frequently. Their patrols came closer each cycle. And so, the humans laid a trap, not to strike, but to observe. The best way to study a hunter was to let it think it had found prey. Back aboard the Seeker's Pulse, the silence only deepened the mystery. The vessel ahead didn't fit into any known categories. It had the size of a colony carrier, the weapons of a dreadnought, and the quietness of a grave. Nova's console beeped softly. Commander, we're within 50 kilometers. External readings confirm iron-based alloys, standard hull plating, but unusually thick. There's internal structure, but I can't identify the layout. Brannick didn't respond. He was staring too intently at the ship. There was a shape there, etched into the side of the hull. He magnified the image. Letters, faint and partially worn, Ember Arc. Translate it, he ordered. Nova blinked. It's already in our database, sir. That's standard galactic, ancient Earth dialect, human origin. A chill passed through the bridge. Humans, he repeated quietly. They don't operate this far. Officially, no. Brannick's face darkened. Unofficially? Nova hesitated. That would make this the first deep-range encounter. The crew glanced at one another, uncertain. Commander Brannick Thorne turned away from the screen and gave the order quietly. Prepare for a surface scan. As the ship's scanners powered up with a low hum, Nova's fingers hovered over her console. Inside the Ember Arc, Ellis Vorn smiled without opening his eyes. Phase 1, he said into the neural link. Let them have a taste. In the space between systems, the first ripple of the trap began to form. They say silence is golden, but in a dim hospital room thick with antiseptic and anxiety, silence can be a different beast altogether. It sat heavy in the air, a quiet thing that clung to the walls and filled the spaces between heartbeats. For days there had been nothing, no answers, no updates, just the rhythmic beep of machines and the gentle hum of fluorescent lights. And then came the scan that broke the silence. The technician didn't mean to be the messenger of anything more than pixels and shadows. He had probably done this 100 times before. Slide the patient in, press a few buttons, watch the screen, take the images, and move on. But today was different. Today, the technician paused. Just a little too long. Not long enough to cause a scene, but long enough for anyone paying attention to feel that cold ripple of something shifting. The room, already cold, seemed to drop a few degrees. It wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't say. Outside the room, Jen paced like she was trying to wear a groove into the tile floor. Every few steps she glanced at the double doors, willing them to open. She hated hospitals. Who didn't? But it wasn't the smell or the lighting that got to her. It was the waiting, the helplessness, the way your world could tilt on its axis with just a few printed lines on a radiology report. She held her phone, like it might buzz with some miracle message. Spoiler, it didn't. When they finally called her in, the doctor wore that face. You know the one. Carefully neutral, overly professional, a shade too calm to be good. He gestured to the chairs with an air of exaggerated gentleness, like he thought she might bolt. Jen sat spine stiff and waited for the words, and there they came, cautiously unspooling from his lips. We found something. Classic. Not exactly the words you want to hear. Not the start of a conversation you want to have. But there it was. The scan showed a mass, a word that carried the weight of a freight train when delivered in that setting. Not quite a diagnosis, but certainly not a vacation brochure either. It sat there on the screen, small and unassuming, nestled in the landscape, of soft tissue like it had every right to be there. And maybe it had been there a while, hiding, waiting. The worst kinds of things are often very patient. Jen didn't cry, not right away. She nodded. She asked the polite questions, the ones you're supposed to ask. What next? Is it serious? Can we take it out? The doctor spoke in measured tones, drawing diagrams on a pad like it was all very academic. But her ears started ringing somewhere around the word biopsy, and the rest of the conversation blurred into background noise. The scan had spoken, and now everything was different. Later, sitting in her car in the parking lot, the silence returned. But it had changed. It wasn't the empty kind anymore. It was heavy, pulsing with meaning, stretching out in all directions. She stared straight ahead, hand still gripping the wheel though the engine was off. The parking lot was half full and utterly indifferent to her panic. A family walked past her car laughing. A nurse took a smoke break by the bench, The world hadn't stopped spinning just because hers had tilted. She let her head fall back against the seat and finally let out the breath she'd been holding for what felt like years. Her phone lit up with messages, friends checking in, work emails piling up, a reminder about the dog's vet appointment. Life and its relentless persistence kept knocking. She ignored it all. For just a minute, she needed to sit in the wreckage of what used to be normal. The thing about a scan is that it doesn't lie. It doesn't sugarcoat or comfort. It just reveals. In black and white and grainy gray, it shows what's there, whether you're ready to see it or not. And now Jen had seen it. The silence was broken, and in its place came noise. Questions, plans, fears, 1,000 what-ifs marching in formation. She wasn't ready, but the scan didn't care. Somewhere deep down, past the panic, past the ache in her throat and the tremble in her fingers, she knew the next chapter had begun. The silence had done its job. It had built tension, created space, and given this moment its weight. But now, it was time for action, for answers, for steel nerves and stubborn hope. The scan had shattered the stillness, and nothing would ever be the same again. The truth, as it turned out, had been hiding in plain sight, just a few meters beneath the surface. When the scan was completed and the data processed, the image that appeared on the monitor wasn't just shapes and shadows anymore. It was clear, too clear. The hull was intact mostly, but something was wrong with the picture. What looked like simple silt had depth and structure. Beneath the layers of sand and time, something man-made clung to the wreck like a secret desperate not to be told. Jenna leaned in closer to the screen. Her hand hovered over the zoom control, as if part of her didn't want to know what came next. But the other part, the stubborn part that had dragged her into countless storms and sleepless nights chasing stories no one else believed, clicked in. The image sharpened. There it was, a compartment that shouldn't be there. A sealed section in the hull with no record in any blueprint, any report, any official file. It was like discovering a hidden room in a house you'd lived in your whole life. The team went quiet. Even the usually unshakable Marcus stopped his fidgeting. He stared at the screen, eyes narrowing as he processed what they were seeing. "That's not ballast," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "That's something else." Jenna nodded slowly. Her brain was moving faster than her mouth could keep up. She'd seen government ships before, military ones too, but none with a compartment like that, hidden below decks in a vessel that had supposedly gone down carrying humanitarian supplies. There was only one way to find out. They prepped the drone for a second dive. The currents were rougher now, the ocean seemingly aware that its cover was about to be blown. The small submersible slid beneath the waves, its lights cutting through the murky water like a flashlight in a cave. They all gathered around the screen again as though watching a movie they couldn't pause. The drone approached the strange compartment, its camera feeding back every slow, careful meter. Then it saw it. A hatch. No markings. No handle. Just a sealed metal door bolted shut from the inside. Jenna could feel her pulse in her ears. Marcus muttered something under his breath. Something about the Navy and how they never really let anything go. Jenna ignored him. She was fixated. She'd been chasing this story for years. Whispers of a ship that vanished, not sunk, and a cargo that no one ever wanted to talk about. She thought it was just a myth, an old sea tale, but now the myth was staring back at her from 200 feet below. She ordered the drone to get closer. The camera tilted, catching something to the right of the hatch. Letters, faded, almost illegible, but enough was visible. Not a name, not a serial number, just one word, project. That was it. Project. And then a number that had been scratched away, as if someone had tried to erase it with time itself. Jenna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her thoughts weren't on the screen anymore. They were racing back through every classified document she'd ever been denied, every report that suddenly disappeared, every source that had gone quiet without explanation. This wasn't about a storm or a sinking. This was about a cover-up. The drone's mechanical arm reached out and brushed against the hatch. The metal echoed back a dull thud, not hollow but thick, heavy. Something was behind it. Maybe equipment, maybe storage, or maybe, just maybe, what Jenna feared most. She remembered an interview from 5 years back. A retired officer who swore he'd seen something loaded onto that ship before it sailed. Something under tarps, guarded like a nuclear code. He'd gone silent after that interview, never answered another call. She thought he was just being dramatic. Now she wasn't so sure. The ocean is good at hiding things. It's quiet, cold, patient. But even the sea has limits. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. Jenna sat back, rubbing her eyes. She knew this was bigger than she'd imagined. Whatever was in that sealed compartment had stayed hidden for a reason. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure it was never found. And now she had footage. Evidence. Enough to ask the right questions, or maybe all the wrong ones. The team was already buzzing, throwing out theories. Military experiments, stolen technology, even biological containment. Every theory sounded ridiculous. Every theory also sounded entirely possible. She knew what came next. Press conferences. Denials. A sudden spike in official interest. Maybe even visits from people who spoke in polite threats. She'd been through that part before. But this time was different. This time, she had more than a story. She had a piece of the truth. A cold, rusted, unmarked piece of the truth sitting silently at the bottom of the ocean. And now the world would want to know what was in it. The night sky stretched wide above the small town, a tapestry of silver dots that seemed comforting in their constancy. To most people, those stars were distant fires burning steadily in the cosmos, untouchable and reliable. But for Elena, they had become something altogether different, something dangerous. She stood on the edge of the field behind her house, the grass cool beneath her bare feet, and gazed upward with a mix of awe and dread. The constellations she once knew by heart felt rearranged, as if someone had tampered with the night's blueprint. What she saw now were not heavenly bodies but eyes watching her. Her breath came in shallow bursts, the cold air stinging her lungs. When had she last felt this alive? It was the same sensation she'd had the night she first saw the flicker in the old lighthouse window, the night she discovered that nothing in her world was truly as it seemed. Back then, the darkness had been simply a backdrop. Now it pulsed with something alive, something that reached down from the heavens and whispered secrets she could not yet understand. She rubbed her arms to keep warm, though the chill in her bones had nothing to do with temperature. Elena remembered the astronomer's words, spoken casually over cups of lukewarm coffee in the observatory's break room. He'd been talking about mapping distant galaxies, but his eyes had lingered on her as he said, "You know, sometimes the stars aren't stars at all." She'd laughed then, thinking it was a joke for students, a way to spice up an otherwise dull lecture. Now she recalled the weight behind his tone, the awkward pause afterward as if he'd spoken too much, and now she realized he had known. A soft hum, barely audible, drifted across the field. It wasn't the sound of crickets or the distant hum of highway traffic. It was deeper, like 1,000 voices whispering in unison. Elena's heart pounded as she scanned the sky. The stars flickered, each pulse synchronized, almost as if they breathed. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. What force could orchestrate such a pattern? What being lay hidden in that reassuring glow? Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a reminder of the world she had left behind for this silent vigil. She glanced at the screen. No message, only the low battery icon blinking at her like a warning. She slipped it back into her jeans and took a cautious step forward, drawn toward the hum. The ground beneath her felt alive, too, a faint vibration coaxing her onward. It was as though the earth itself was tuned to the same frequency, resonating with the ancient song of those false stars. Elena wondered, not for the first time, why she had been chosen, why the call had fallen on her shoulders. She wasn't a hero, at least not in any conventional sense, just a girl with a curious mind and a tendency to stay up late reading science blogs. Yet here she was, unraveling a cosmic secret that defied every lesson she'd ever learned. She thought of her brother, asleep back home, dreaming of baseball games and comic books. If he could see her now, he'd tell her she was crazy. But if what she suspected was true, the entire world might think so soon enough. A sudden flash of light split the sky, sharper than any shooting star she'd ever seen. It carved a jagged line across the heavens, and for a heartbeat the world went dark. Then one by one each star winked out. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The sky above her was empty, a vast black canvas with nothing but the hush of the hum. She raised her trembling hand as if to shield her eyes, but there was no glare to block. The absence itself was blinding. Then the hum turned into a voice, ancient and resonant, louder than any storm wind. It spoke her name, slicing through her panic with a calm certainty. Elena fell to her knees, mind racing. The voice promised revelations, answers to questions she hadn't known to ask. It spoke of worlds beyond sight and of powers older than the sun. And as she listened, her fear gave way to something else. Curiosity, fierce and unforgiving. She closed her eyes, willing herself to stay grounded. When she opened them again, the stars returned, brighter than before, as if nothing had happened. Yet she knew the truth. The sky she saw now was a facade, a polished mask hiding something far more complex. She felt both triumphant and terrified, aware that the knowledge she had gained would change her life irrevocably. The stars were not what they seemed, and neither was she anymore. Elena rose to her feet, heart still pounding, and brushed grass from her jeans. The hum had faded, but its echo lingered in her mind. She took a final look at the sky, committing every detail to memory: the pattern of constellations, the steady twinkle of Sirius, the silent promise of Polaris. Then she turned toward home. She would need help, guidance, allies she could trust. The world needed to know what lay beyond the stars, even if it meant shattering the comfortable illusions people held dear. As she walked across the dewy grass, the first rays of dawn began to lighten the horizon. The truth waited with the sunrise, ready to be revealed. And Elena, once an ordinary observer of the night, now carried the weight of the cosmos in her heart. She stepped into the coming day, determined to unravel the mysteries that lay hidden beyond the pinpricks of light above.